Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for video number 15 of our 27-day devotional series based on the book, A Time to Dance, Chasing Joy in Difficult Seasons. I'm really excited to talk to you about chapter 15, so thank you so much for joining me here. If you've already read chapter 15, you know that it's all about that pursuit of perfection. It's this underlying thing that I know I've struggled with for years. Maybe some of you guys out there relate, but it's just this chase for perfection in everything I do, and people pleasing, and wanting so badly to hit the mark so that I'm enough to be invited to the table, so that I'm enough to be loved and accepted by those around me. And not only that, truthfully, the pursuit of perfection really came down to being enough to love myself and being enough to allow God to love me the way that He's trying to love me. So even if you haven't read the chapter, this is a really great video. It's a super awesome topic to talk about, especially at the start of the new year, because I love the way God works. We're rolling this out right at the New Year's, when we often have those heavy, times of reflection where we're looking back at the last year and we're looking forward and we're sitting there going, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? What do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? How can I be more? And this chapter really pulls that back and says, it's not about being more. It's about remembering who you are in God, how He sees you, and then letting that pour through you, deeply root into your identity, and allowing yourself to grow from that point so that all the other things just begin to fall into place. And so I will get to that in just a minute. But first, we're going to start with kind of how I discovered this deeply rooted belief that I always had to be more and do more to be worthy of love, so that I didn't have to suffer the rejection of others. At the beginning of the chapter, I talk a lot about how we have this king size mattress and we put a foam topper on it, and when you try to put a fitted sheet on, it just didn't work well. And so you get one side on, and then another side would just pop off, and it really took two people to get this thing on, because you get one side in and the other side would pop off, and then you go around, you get that side in, the other side would pop off. And as I'm sitting there just fighting this thing one day, willing it just stay in place, I began to realize that so much of my life, and maybe I didn't realize it, maybe God was whispering this into my spirit, so much of my life looked like this. I would spend every day trying to get the mom thing right. And if I got it right, the spouse thing would pop off. I'd have a moment with my husband, or maybe I got the job thing right and I was feeling really good, but then, the friend thing popped off, and I felt like I had failed as a friend to someone, or the daughter thing, or whatever it is. It felt like that every night when I laid my head on the pillow, I would lay there, and no matter how great I did in one area, there was always another area that I was reflecting on and saying, wow, I really bombed over there. I really bombed. And I never went to bed at night with any sense of peace or joy. I just always went to bed promising myself that when I woke up, I was going to do better, be more, work harder, be more patient. It was always this checklist of things that I was going to be tomorrow in order to chase that perfection better. And so, the funny thing about that is I could never let go of that pursuit. I couldn't figure out how, because it was like a deeply rooted belief system in me that I had to do that in order to be enough. So as God began revealing this in my life, I would go to Him and ask Him, how do I fix that, God? Like, how do I heal this? How do I take these running shoes off, get off this hamster wheel where every day I'm just running as hard as I can towards perfection, but I'm never actually getting there? How do I take those running shoes off? Because my whole life, this is just how I've always said, this is who I am. This is just who I am. And God's like, this is not who you are. This is a broken system, a broken piece of your belief system about who you are. And I said, okay, so then help me understand how to correct that. I want to be able to put on dancing shoes and dance in how you see me, and dance in my day as a mother, and dance in who I am, but I simply don't know how to do it. So God really began to pour into me that the first step in that is to start watering these seeds that he had planted in me about who he says I am. Like really intentionally begin to water those seeds, begin to accept them as truths. Because see, the truth is, a lot of times I would create a filter where when God would try to pour in, you are beautiful, you are loved, you are worthy, you are chosen, you are irreplaceable, you are the daughter of the king, you are royalty, you are incredible, you are a masterpiece, I would say, no, God, I'm not. No, God, I'm not. What about this? But what about this? And I would filter all those messages out. And so the first thing that he really began to teach me is you got to stop filtering out everything I'm pouring in. Instead, you need to water it. So he would plant these seeds in me about who he says I am. And then I would begin to capture those thoughts when they would sneak in and say, you're a failure, you're a bad mom, you're a bad wife. I would capture those thoughts and say, no, I'm not. That's not what Jesus says about me. So if you have experienced that, let me just remind you, because I pulled a lot of pieces that I found all through the Bible that I wanted to share with you about who God says you are. So if you were to put on your Jesus lenses, that's what I tell my little boy. If you were to put on your Jesus lenses and see yourself the way that he sees you, this is what you would see. You are chosen, you are loved, you are the cherished daughter of the King, you are royalty, you belong here, you are beautifully made just as you are. You have special gifts that only you bring to the world. You are irreplaceable. You have a purpose. You have a light. You are special. You are known. You are far more than enough. Your family is blessed to have you. Your friends are blessed to have you. We are blessed to have you. And it is your time to bloom. So if you put on your Jesus goggles and you begin, or your Jesus lenses, we'll do it that way, and you begin to really water those things in your spirit. So whenever you hear that thought creep in, and don't underestimate the enemy, because he does not like it when we begin to grow in who we are in God. So don't underestimate when those thoughts are being whispered. They may not necessarily be your thoughts. The enemy loves to keep you down, to keep you feeling like you are defeated. So when you hear those thoughts creep in that say you are not worthy, you are not good enough, you are not valuable, you are not special, you are not a masterpiece, you are a failure. When you hear those words creep in, you stop them in their tracks and you say, that is not what Jesus says about me. And you put sticky notes on your mirror. You put a note for yourself in the visor of your car. You put little reminders on your phone, whatever it takes, but begin to water those. And I promise you, God will be good and he will meet you there and he will water those words as well. So step one, honestly, is just to begin to recognize the words that you are speaking to yourself and begin to capture those words before you let them root. Let them water the words that God is placing inside you and let them begin to take root in your spirit about what he says about you. But then there's another part of this too. So one of the pieces that God really put together for me, and I feel like this is a good visual for me because I think that when I felt this come together, suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. My identity was like a piece of putty, and I talk about this in chapter 15, where when I would go to a girls' get-together, a party, a church, it didn't matter. I could just be having lunch with a friend. I would pull out this piece of putty and I would hand it over to them and I would say, tell me who I am. And they would mold me and they would shape me and I would anxiously sit there and wait for them to hand it back to me and tell me who I am. Am I worthy? Am I enough? Do I belong at this table? I would anxiously wait because that was what I identified as a truth, what they said about me, what they said about my identity. I mean, this was a real big hurdle for me because I would go to bed at night if I went out with someone, even for lunch, and I would sit there and relive the entire conversation. I would sit there and go, what did I say? How did I act? Did I smile funny? Did my breath smell funny? And I would go through every word, and maybe I should text them. Maybe I said that wrong. What if they misinterpreted that? What if they didn't like that? What if that was kind of controversial? I would go through, and it would become like this thing that would keep me up at night, right? And it got to a point where it created a social anxiety in me that was so big that I became a hermit. I wouldn't go out. I wouldn't meet with people. I wouldn't do things because the safety of being at home and not having to face that rejection, face what they were going to hand me back when they handed that piece of putty back to me, became, I would rather stay at home in the safety of my little comfort zone than to venture out and risk that kind of rejection. And it was flawed. That thinking was flawed because the truth is, at the end of the day, that your identity should be deeply rooted in God and what He says about you, and let everything else become a beautiful extension of that, because He is the only one at the end of the day who gets to define you. And let me tell you, He loves you more than you can imagine. It doesn't matter what road you've walked. It doesn't matter what mistakes you've made. It doesn't matter how far you've run. He loves you more than you can possibly imagine. And when you begin to allow that love really just deeply root in your system, you're going to find a confidence and a joy and a peace that pours into you that is indescribable. If we allow our chase of perfection to be, I want to chase God's heart. And then the byproduct or the fruit of that is going to be that peace and joy that begins to pour into you. And it starts to pour into every area of your life. So instead of this chase of perfection seeping into every area and almost like a toxin poisoning the happiness and the joy in all these different areas of your life, suddenly you're going to feel this peace and joy begin to pour into you. And it goes the other way. It doesn't seep through, it overflows into so many areas of your life. And suddenly all these other resolutions that you were wanting to chase start falling into place because you have energy, you have joy, you have just this desire to just pour into all these things. And it's really cool how that happens. It just becomes like a total byproduct. So that's why I was super excited about chapter 15 actually landing right at New Year's. And I love the way that God works with that, because the truth is that I expected these videos to fall into place a lot sooner than this. But as life happens, it got crazy. Things started happening around me. And so this video just fell right at New Year's, and it's like, dang God, I love how you work. I love how this happened. So I'm not a girl who just sits back and goes, oh, it's all a coincidence. I am a girl who sits back and says, thank you, Jesus, for your love notes. Thank you for your messages. Thank you for your love, your kindness, your grace. Thank you for pouring into me, and thank you for helping me, walk through every day of this life. And so I just wanted to pour into you as you start the new year. It's time. It's time to get off that hamster wheel. It's time to stop taking your identity like a piece of putty and handing it to everyone around you. It's time to let it be deeply rooted in what God says about you. It's time to put on dancing shoes and dance in who He says you are. It's time to stop filtering out His messages and let His peace and love and joy pour into you, so that, you don't have to feel that weight of who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Do I belong at this table? My friend, if there is not a place for you at someone's table, there is always a place for you at His, because you are His chosen one. He loves you. You are special. And let me tell you, you are irreplaceable. You are His masterpiece. Inside each one of us, He placed this beautiful piece of Him. I was thinking of this tonight as I'm driving. Gorgeous sunset, snow everywhere. It's orange, pink, purple, you name it going on in the sky. And I'm thinking, what a show off, God. That is a beautiful masterpiece. And then I began to think about how God places pieces of Him in each one of us. And we are a masterpiece, but we also have these incredible gifts that we can pour out onto others. And that's so perfectly, because it's a piece of Him that He placed inside of us that we can pour out to others. And it so perfectly loops me to the very end of this video, the very last point that I want to make. And I want you guys to hold on to these questions. hold on to these questions and really, really think about them, okay? So here they are. Number 1, if you are always trying to be something else, how can you share the unique and amazing gift that he gave to you? Because you are unique, individual, irreplaceable, and you have a beautiful gift that this world desperately needs. You don't need to be somebody else. You don't need to fit inside a box. If the canvas is gray, you can be the bold streak of color that just goes right through it. Just slap bright red on your paintbrush and go right through that gray. You don't have to fit in any box. God made you to stand out. God didn't make you to blend in. God made you to stand out. So if you don't blend in, give thanks for that, because we're not supposed to. Don't try to be like everybody else. Be the you that God made you to be, and dance in the beauty of who you really are. Here's the second question. If you hide in the shadows because you fear rejection, how can you shine for his glory in just the way he designed you to shine? The truth is, he made you down to every intricate little detail, and he made you to shine. And I spent years and years and years hiding in the shadows because I was terrified of rejection. But rejection doesn't matter when you're deeply rooted in what God says about you, who God says you are. So when you go out there tomorrow, don't you chase perfection. Don't you look in the rearview mirror and say, but I didn't. Don't do that. Look at who God says you are. Look through your Jesus lenses. Water it. Let it deeply root in your spirit. Don't filter it out. Know that you are beautiful and walk in that truth. And then watch as God not only pours his blessings into that, but he will also show you the fruit of walking in that identity, the fruit, the byproducts, all the things that you've been trying to chase on your own. His peace, his joy, his hope as it pours into you will allow those things to just become, because they will be these beautiful fruits and byproducts of just living a life dancing in who he says you are and living a life walking hand in hand with him. So that is chapter 15. I loved chapter 15. I am constantly replanting chapter 15 in my spirit. I'm constantly going back and saying, put that back in, because let me tell you, when you've spent a lifetime chasing perfection, you're real good at telling yourself you're not enough, but we have to capture those thoughts before they root. We have to capture them and say, those are not God's truth. That is not who I am. And then tell yourself, I am beautiful, chosen, enough, more than enough, called, worthy, loved, flawless, all these incredible things that God says about you. So go out, guys, live it up, dance today in who he says you are, and have a beautiful and blessed, not only day, but have a beautiful and blessed 2023. We will see you in video number 16, which is about the brokenness around you. It's about when you're walking through that healing season and there's a lot of brokenness around you, and it's really hard to continue on that journey because you feel like the brokenness around you is sometimes affecting your own personal journey. So I'll see you guys in chapter 16. Bye.